Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Linda, and I'm originally from Michigan, now living in the St. Louis metro area. I'm a college coach with School Match for You and have a daughter at University of Chicago.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a graduate of the University of Georgia, and she is getting her master's degree at North Carolina State University. Good morning, friends. As you'll hear later, Lisa predicted it. I am still in Pagosa Springs, but this is my last day of antibiotics, and it was just easier to stay here while I'm under treatment. So I'm scheduled to head back on Thursday. So for those of you who listen to episodes just as they drop, I should be driving when episode 349 goes live. But I come to you this morning inspired and invigorated. If you heard last week's episode, I got really transparent about a shocking knee surgery I didn't see coming. It came out of nowhere. And a new resolve I have to lose 80 pounds in response to both Dave and my daughter challenging me. So, are you ready for a big number? Over 70 people sent me personal messages. That's right, I got over 60 text messages, about a dozen emails, and several private social media messages. And the stories were just so inspiring. Some shared about their own knee surgery. Others shared about their own battle with weight loss. Others were just empathetic and encouraging. About 10 people shared their recommended diet or approach to weight loss. And part of my head was just spinning because everyone had a different diet or approach. So I didn't know there were so many different diets out there until I started reading all these emails. But I had two that really resonated with me. Two individuals shared the success they'd had working with doctors, dietitians, nutritionists, and who specialize in this kind of thing. And they gave recommendations. One listener even went so far as to research great people in Atlanta for me. So you know what, friends? We have a really special community of friends here. You proved to me you really are cyber friends who care. And it's just so personally inspiring that it makes me look even more forward to every Monday and every Thursday to come meet with you guys. And so just a brief update. My knee is healing. I'm walking with far less pain. As for eating, I'm in that place that I love to be in. I've been here many times before, but it's also a little dangerous. So I'm in this place right now where I'm so motivated and it's so easy to stay on task. The thought of some of the foods I used to eat are repulsive and repugnant. I'm enjoying healthy eating. I say it's dangerous because, there's this verse in the Bible that says, let him who thinks he stand take heed lest he fall. And I've been here before where you kind of feel like, okay, I'm in the zone. It's never, ever going to be a struggle with discipline ever again. But history tells me there will be challenging times of temptation. And that's where my accountability group, and I actually include the listeners in this, is going to help me when my body's pulling me one way and my mind's pulling me another way. I know from my past history that my weakness is restaurants and when I travel and I go to conferences. When I'm just here and I'm making my own food, I'm in the zone, it's really easy. But friends, I'm going to weigh myself when I get home. And once a month, I'll share my weight with you. And you guys will hear as those 80 pounds drop down. I'll keep sharing with you how many more I have to go. And so we had over 45,000 people listen to our podcast last month. So there's nothing like putting yourself out there to 45,000 people. So you're part of my support team. But let's get to today's episode. So we've had 74 SpeakPipe questions come in. That's a lot in a short period of time. And we don't want to get months behind. So for a while, we're going to go to Monday and Thursday until we get caught up. I'm also going to spread the questions out with some of our other co-hosts. That's partly not to burn Lisa out like I ended up doing with Anika. And even Dave had to go from weekly to monthly episodes. I don't want to do that to Lisa. But I also want you to hear from some of our other 7 co-hosts. So it isn't just Lisa and I dominating the interviews and the spotlights and the question segment. So, but today, Lisa and I will answer a question from Melissa from Massachusetts, and she wants to know if it's worth doing the college's own application to show demonstrated interest. We will then continue with part 2 of 3 of Lisa's excellent interview with Dr. Jenni Griffin, the Dean of Apex at the College of Wooster. And that'll be our episode for the week.
And now it's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right, Lisa. Well, this is going to probably shock you, but by the time the SpeakPipe question we're going to answer today goes live, I should be back in Atlanta.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I mean, this is like the longest trip ever. I left on the 8th, and August 1. I'm hopefully going to be home, so we'll see. But
well, you had quite an adventure on this.
I sure did.
Sometimes adventures take time.
Yes, yeah, and that's why I'm going to take my sweet time going back too. Drive 3 hours, maybe see a college, and then get into Zoom calls with families we're working with. But hopefully I'm back home. If not, I'll let you know my whereabouts. Your hair might be spinning, but I love this question. Anything you want to say to tee this one up?
Well, this is from Melissa from Massachusetts, and I also love this question.
Hi, Mark, and everybody at Your College Bound Kid. My name is Melissa. I'm from Massachusetts, and I listen to your podcast twice a week and have been for years. I absolutely look forward to listening to everything that you all have to say. I find your podcast so knowledgeable and interesting and light. And even once I have kids that will no longer be in college or in high school needing this information, I know that I will continue to listen. I have a rising senior, and we've been doing some college tours, and both my husband and my daughter had the same question, so I thought it might be worth asking. Although many of the schools on her list accept the Common App, there are schools that also have their own application. So even though they take the Common App, they also have their own school-specific application. And both of them were wondering if there was any benefit to completing the school-specific application. More specifically, does it show a greater demonstrated interest if you complete their application rather than the Common App? Thanks so much. I look forward to your answer, and thank you so much for everything that you do.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why I love this question, because there have been some schools in the past that have been busted for trying to use their own specific application in a discriminatory way. Now, NACAC, especially when it had a lot more teeth as an enforcer of policies, like that was a clear violation of policies. NACAC and Common App also has some language in there that makes it clear that, you cannot do that. This is a violation of ethics to use your own application in a preferential way. However, I once had an admission officer, and this was not that long ago, tell me that they do see that as a way of signaling interest, that you did their own application and took the time in to do that, and that you're probably more serious about them. However, that stuff is so clandestine because it is a real violation of all kinds of policies and principles. And normally, like, for example, to be a member of the Common App, you have to agree to not do that. And so you're really breaking a lot of policies, NACAC, Common App, a lot of things. I am not of the opinion, though, that it's worth doing just to signal that. First of all, there's a lot of things for kids to do, and they're incredibly busy with so many things, whether it's their own their own personal activities, their schoolwork, not to manage all aspects of the college process. So, in my opinion, the schools that are doing this are usually quite a ways down on the selectivity tier. And I don't think it's actually worth it, even that I'm not naive about the fact that it does sometimes go on. And Tulane, which is a pretty selective school, was busted a few years ago for this. and was called out on the carpet for having done this. But that was, that was some time ago now. So I'm not naive to not know that it still sometimes goes on. And the fact that a school, which I won't mention, literally told me, hey, one thing you might want to tell your students to submit our own app if they want to. That actually happened to me, and that was in the last 5 years. But to me, it's not. What's that saying? The juice isn't worth the squeeze? I think I got that right. Is that right? The juice is. Have you heard that one?
Juice is not worth the squeeze.
Yeah. In my opinion, the juice is not. I can't believe I got it right. The juice is not worth the squeeze on this one. Like, you just have too many other things to be concerned about to do that. Now, not that I support this, but occasionally I do get a student that says, I'm applying to more than 20 schools. As much as I try to talk them out of it, they're going to do it. And the Common App cuts you off at 20. And so when you're cut off at 20, you either have to go to the coalition or you have to go to individual apps. And that's a different situation. But those are my thoughts. Anything you want to add?
It's funny because when Lily first toured Elon, Greg Zeiser did our information session. He straight up told people, if you want to get in and you want to get the highest level of scholarship, we prefer that you do our application. So we did that, and it was a total pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But she got in. I'm sure she probably would have gotten in on the Common App. So I didn't really know that was kind of against the rules.
Oh yeah, that's I'm really shocked that he said that publicly in front of a group.
Just straight out and hundreds of people there.
Yeah.
So
I'm actually shocked that would happen. No one. Yeah.
Now I think when I went to the info session with you, they made a big point of saying that they love all the applications equally. So I don't know, but that's just kind of my story about that. I know too, now, a lot of kids are using the school's own applications, like at Auburn and Ole Miss, to apply right now and get in right now. Because if you use the school's own application, you'll get a quicker decision, or it's open earlier than the Common App too. And so that's another thing I see kids doing.
Yeah, and I don't think that's not unintentional. Schools trying to get as strategic as they can, every competitive advantage they can to get, it used to drive me crazy when I was doing boarding school admissions because the Catholic schools were notorious for this. Having an early application date, and they would even have a mandatory reply date you had to make a decision by if you got a scholarship that was earlier than the rest of us gave our admit dates.
Right.
And we would push back as people were like, look, I'm really interested in school, but I don't want to lose this thing. And sometimes you could call them and they would extend it. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. But they absolutely knew what they were doing. And I think that's part of what's going on with some of those Southern schools too. Get ahead of the curve, get people an early admission, get them excited and stoked, and maybe they'll go ahead and enroll. We probably should have more conversations about some of the creative and in some cases sinister ways in which schools do all kinds of different things to increase their yield. And I'm convinced that's one of the ones that's going on there with some of the Southern schools doing that. I personally have never publicly heard what you heard at Elon. I've had it whispered to me, don't repeat this and don't quote me, So the fact that I've had it whispered to me, you've heard it directly, it is proof that it does happen.
Right.
But Elon still has a 70% admit rate. So.
Right. I mean, and they, a lot of times I think their yield is a big deal to them. So, I could see why they want something that shows this person is signaling to us that they will come, and then we're going to be more likely to extend things. But, perhaps not that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, yield's a big deal to everybody out there. It's super competitive. And I definitely see how, it could be helpful for a school. But it's also not fair to the applicants. There's certain things that, are just considered inappropriate. It's I'm not going to mention the school, but a client that I'm working with this year, they had a bad experience at a school that you and I know quite well, where they visited the school and they ended up the regional admission officer just happened to be there at the time in the lobby. So they pulled him aside and had a conversation. And they actually were quite interested in the school until this is post-tour. And what did the regional rep do? Several things. What are your SAT scores? Even that the student had good scores, they're like, what if I wanted to apply test optional? Why do I want to tell you my scores? And then they also said, where else are you applying? Well, that's something that is considered Goshen inappropriate etiquette to ask where else you're applying. That is just not, that is like crossing a Rubicon. It's crossing a line of impropriety. But people still do it. I have to prepare the people that I train to do interviews to be ready for that question. Because one year I had that question asked 4 times. Now, these were alumni, curious alumni mostly, not like admission officers, but it still throws people off.
Right.
So there's certain things that happen that are inappropriate, but they happen. And I can see why, from a school standpoint, if I could get that intel, that would be helpful to me. But there's just things there's like, things that are ethical and unethical. And so I think this is good. I think it's a good conversation because I think what we've revealed is that it does happen out there where schools have their own application and use it partly as a signal of you're more serious about us because you put the time in to do our own application. I mean, let's take a look at MIT and Georgetown, 2 places that have their own application, which they're completely allowed to do because they don't participate in Common App or Coalition, right? But I've had conversations with both of them where they've admitted that doing their own application, it shows a certain kind of commitment on the part of the student to their school. So they're actually doing the same thing. They're just doing it in what I would argue would be an ethical way, which would be, if you want to, do our entire application as opposed to another school, I think that's ethical. I also, I don't like it because I think it's not being sensitive to the workload students have. And it's you may remember in my interview with PD on MIT, I challenged him on that. Why can't you just use school-specific essays to get at the unique aspects you want? Why do you need to make a student do a completely different application? But part of that is about predicting yield. And they have the clout in the marketplace that people will do an entire application for MIT and that in a kind of sophisticated one where they won't for some other schools. So do I think it's being used that way? Yes, but I think it's mostly being used by that way with schools with higher admit rates. Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes, I think sometimes it's implied that they would like that, mostly as a yield strategy. But the reason why I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze is I think you would still mostly get admitted if you did it the regular way. So it's just not worth the time. Like Lily would have been admitted at Elon. She didn't need to do that.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that was the first year that they were on the Common App, I believe. So, I mean, before that, people were doing their own app. So it might have been like a transitional piece.
I think that's exactly what's going on. You're so right. I remember when Elon joined the Common App. And so that's a little different. That explains why they would publicly make that statement because they were so new to the Common App.
Right. I mean, it was their first year. I don't think they knew how it was going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she would. I mean, yeah, I joke now. I tease her now that maybe she wouldn't get in because Elon's gotten a lot more popular. But that's mostly
how does she like that joke? Does she laugh hard?
No, she doesn't. She doesn't laugh at all. It's weird. It's so funny too.
Listen, this is why we love our listeners, and we love the questions that you send in, and they're really thought provoking. And then I also want to just thank Melissa for being part of our listening family. She mentioned she listens twice a week, and we love that. We love our regular listeners, but I think this is a great question and hopefully people benefited from it. I think it's up to you individually if you want to make that decision. I'm not telling people not to do it. I'm just saying I don't counsel my students to do it because I think with all the other things going on, whatever incremental benefit that you get from that, I really don't think that it's dispositive when it comes to the decision that would be made by the school when you look at the factors that they use. So hopefully that's helpful. Thank you again, Melissa from Massachusetts. And we also love how you are a member of our listening family. You listen every week, and we love it when people say they're going to continue to listen long after their kid is in college. And for sending in that speak pipe question, you will get a copy of the outstanding book Elliot Felix wrote called How to Get the Most Out of College, subtitled 127 Ways to Make Connections, Make It Work for You, and Make a Difference. And if you missed Lisa's interview with Elliot Felix, all of our interviews can be heard in one audio file in their entirety without part 1, 2, or 3 by just going to yourcollegeboundkid.com, click the interview tab, and we also have captions or headings as well, so you can search by different subject matter.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, hopefully you heard part 1 of Lisa's interview with Dr. Jenni Griffin, the Dean of Apex at the College of Wooster. In part 2, Dr. Griffin explains what the Apex Fellows Program is. Lisa asks Dr. Griffin, how can families evaluate whether a school offers the type of services that Apex offers? Jenni talks about how important it is to learn how to study. Jenni talks about 2 questions we need to stop asking students. But adults and students, they just continue to keep asking students these 2 questions that they should not be asking students. And then Jenni talks about how decision fatigue works and how it can be paralyzing. Listen and enjoy.
What is the Apex Fellows program that you mentioned earlier?
Thank you. So, speaking of reducing barriers, a lot of the students that come to the College of Wooster are very interested in work at nonprofit agencies. They're interested in careers that might revolve around certain justice kinds of issues. And what we have found, the history of our students, is that many of them, when they seek internships, find that their internship is either not paid, so they're not going to make any money, or it's not well paid, right? So they might make a little bit of money, but certainly not enough to sustain them across the summer. And we know our students need to work, right? Everybody needs to make some income. And so through the really, really phenomenal generosity of donors, we have an endowment. Actually, people are going to be really jealous about this. We have actually 3 major endowments that allow us to provide funding for students to do internships that are unpaid or underpaid. We do about 60 a summer. So our students apply through a competitive process. It's a lot like writing a grant proposal. They have to have a contract with their internship site. They have to have here's the job description of what we'll do. They have to have a budget worked out. If there's travel included, they might be able to get some additional money for travel. But basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide them with the funding that they would need or they would earn in a summer job that's 6 to 8 weeks long.
That sounds like a great opportunity for those students,
Yeah.
both, in terms of earning the money, but also in applying and preparing and trying to think through all of those budgetary issues. That's great training for life.
Yeah. And it's, here, some of the cool things about this, it's a super supported process. So a student who's interested in an internship can come in and ask questions about internships, and we direct them as to, where you can find the internships and what are the tools that you can use to do that. But in those conversations, we can also talk about the fellowships and then begin a long conversation with them about how they need to develop their materials for the application. And after they get an Apex Fellowship, they're assigned a faculty mentor, and that faculty mentor communicates with them throughout their internship program. And every week or every 2 weeks, they have a conversation that is very reflective. So talking about what are you learning? How are you developing your skills? Is this internship meeting the goals that you laid out for yourself for it? And when they come back to campus, the expectation is that they'll, in some public way, talk about their experience. So every student who's an Apex Fellow does a poster presentation. So they have a printed poster. And they either go to an FYS class or a class in their major, or they present at our family weekend, or they present at another symposium, but they have to actually talk about their experience. We have students who coach them in that process. So students
And
who
now
are
this week's
frightened
interview with a
of
special
public
guest.
speaking, they get some really good coaching from their fellow students. And I am always astounded at how amazing our students are at presenting what they've learned in this time. It's astonishing to see them. So if you ever get a chance, click on Apex. What is it? It's the Experiential Learning. It used to be called the Experiential Learning Symposium. The word's not coming to me now, but there are links on our website. If you just look up experiential learning, inevitably on the website, you'll see some videos of our students talking about their experiences. It's really powerful.
Yeah, that sounds like a great opportunity for students. Of course, the College of Wooster is a fan favorite for those of us at your college-bound kid, and Apex is a major reason why that not everyone is going to get to go to the College of Wooster.
Yeah.
Because you're a small school. So, how can parents and students evaluate, kind of the similar type of services at colleges as they're thinking about where to apply or where to go?
Yeah, this is such a really great question. I think one, every student really has to sort of think about what are the key things that they think they're going to need. And so the first thing is, I think families really need to have good discussions about what kind of institution is going to work well for their student. A good discussion about, so what are your strengths as a student? What are some weaknesses you might have? And start thinking about, what are some services you might need to pay special attention to? So, I'd be looking at what do I know about my own student? And then based on what I know about my student, really, really asking pretty decent questions about how are these services kind of organized at that institution? I think now I wouldn't want my kids to go to a place that they had to walk all over campus, to find, let's say they want to study abroad, they've got to walk to the study abroad office. But the study abroad office then tells them, well, we can't do anything until you talk to your academic advisor, and you have to have a plan from your academic advisor. And then they can't meet with their academic advisor for 3 or 4 weeks, right? Because the academic advisor is a busy person, or maybe has 300 people, right? If that's an important thing for your student, my student wants to study away, then you want to ask questions about what is the process for that at this institution. How many students study away? Where do they study away? How do they know that the credits that they're studying there when they're on their study abroad will actually transfer? How do they create the space for this in their academic plan, and if they're an athlete or if they're a science major? So thinking about questions like that based on the interest, I'd want people to ask questions about what's the kind of academic support that my student can get if my student has trouble, if my student struggles with something. Like you, I didn't feel that support, right? I went to a large public institution. As a freshman, I had really hard time with chemistry. And we had small group meetings with a graduate student who was supposed to help us. I found those not helpful at all. I found those more confusing. And I didn't know if there was a tutoring service. I didn't know if I could go someplace and learn how to study differently for chemistry than I would for my literature class, right? it's good to know what that support looks like at an institution, right? So if I want to know about peer tutoring, I should ask about it. If I want to know about, I'm a student that has an accommodation, maybe because I'm hearing impaired, I want to know, where do I go to learn about those services? How easy is it to get those services? Who am I working with? I think one of the things we do really well is, as an institution, we really talk about all of that stuff from the minute we start the admissions process to the time when they're enrolling. So, we're gearing up right now for our academic registration for first year students. Starts tomorrow. So when I get off this call, I'm going to be looking at, here are the students I'm meeting tomorrow. What do I need to be ready for when they start asking questions? But at that moment, we have a series of things for families and the students where they can ask more detailed questions now that they know they're going to be a student here. And it's really thinking about, what are those the key questions I want to ask? And that develops over time. So sometime in July, I'm sure we'll have students asking, okay, now, I don't know if my paperwork from my doctor's got here and I have an accommodation. How do I check on that, right? You want to follow them all the way through. And I think that's what we do really well at the College of Wooster.
I would agree with that. So, it seems like one thing you need to do as a parent is, like, once you determine what your kid needs, figure out who provides that and how hard is it for the student to access it. And I think that it varies. I toured McGill last week with my daughter just because, we were on vacation, but I always make her go visit colleges because I'm just that mom. And, and our tour guide was really wonderful. And he was kind of advising kids, like, if you want to go to McGill, you need to be motivated. You need to go talk to your professors, because I was just a number for my first 2 years here. Nobody knew my name. I was a number, and I had to go make them know my name. And, that's great. He was able to do that. I don't think that all 17-year-olds necessarily know or are able to do that.
Right.
And, so finding places where your student is going to feel comfortable asking for the help that they need. And I love this idea of just saying, this is part of college, getting help, because we all need help.
Yeah.
None of us are perfect at everything, and we all have areas that we could improve. I kind of wish I could go to Apex now and have them help me with my time management and some other scheduling issues that I seem to have. So we all need help, and that we want our students to be able to be comfortable asking for it.
Right. I'm laughing with you because yesterday, one of the joys of our space is we can meet up at the coffee pot, right? And hang out and have a conversation. And one of my colleagues was talking about, we're a strengths campus. So, we use the Gallup Strengths Quest. And one of my colleagues was talking about just how deliberate and, what's the word I'm looking for? Disciplined she is about everything, right? So when she gets her kids ready, her kids have like a pile of stuff that they know they have to put in their bags, and it's all laid out, like the pile is there, the kids pack it up and they're ready to go in the morning. And it's a really organized process.
Oh my.
I know. My other colleague and I were talking about the fact that that doesn't fit with who we are as human beings. And like mornings at our house, hers currently is chaos. Mine, when my kids were young, the only way I controlled the chaos was to get up an hour ahead of time and center myself so that I wasn't, crazy. But I don't have that discipline, right? And so we were talking about the fact that as procrastinators, we could really learn from her discipline strength. And so it was really kind of fun. She also happens to be our disciplined person is someone who works with students, who is an academic life coach, who works on things like how do you do time management, and so both of us were like, well, could we set up an appointment with you where we can talk about our own time management and you can help us with that? It's true. Sometimes we don't recognize it. When we were in high school, we didn't have the same demands on us. And so students walk away from high school with thinking like, yeah, I do all this great. I'm not going to need any help. College is a different beast. And they're sometimes in for a shock when they realize, oh, I've got to shift the way I do things, and they don't. One question that nobody asked me was, who taught you how to study? Mm-hmm. And did anybody teach you how to study? Here, we specifically teach students how to study. And it's got to be different. It's got to be different for different types of tests. They require different types of preparation, different types of classes, right? And if no one's ever spent time with you thinking about how that you actually do those things differently, then it's natural that you'd need some help in that direction, right? And I think, this is just a great thing to know that there are people out there who can stop you from suffering alone in the dark, right?
Yeah. I think that, I've come to realize over time that so much of the things that we blame ourselves for, like I'm disorganized, or I'm late, or I procrastinate, though there are such explicit skills that you can be taught.
Yeah.
It's not like a personal failing, but in our society, somehow it's like, if you can't do it, it's because there's something wrong with you, and that's just the end of it, right? But there's all these explicit tasks that can be taught that make people's lives better. I interviewed Dr. Lewis Newman a few weeks ago, and he's written a book on critical thinking for college students. And he just lays out in the most beautiful, simple terms what critical thinking is and how you can apply it. What are some questions you should be asking and how you can apply it in different disciplines. Yeah. And I thought, if I had this book when I was in college, my life would be completely different. I mean, maybe it wouldn't. I figured it out, but it was not fun. It was a painful process. And I was stumbling around. Like, there's so much that we can do to just give people a roadmap.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you brought up the notion that, we did a lot of stumbling around, right? I mean, I clearly did. If I didn't have a major by the time I was a junior, I almost quit college. I remember very clearly a conversation late in my sophomore year where I said to my mother, I feel like I'm wasting your money because I don't know yet what I'm doing, and she urged me to go back for one more quarter of college. And I happened to have a professor who said to me, have you ever thought about graduate school in this? Because you're really good at it. Mm-hmm. Oh, ta-da! There's my career. But that was it. There were, like maybe two people who said to me those words, right? There's not the need to do that. And, one of the things I would say for if I had to give a lecture to parents and to society at large, which no one will ever let me do.
I will. You can do it right now during this interview.
There we go.
Lecture begin.
Right. I think I would urge people to stop asking a couple of very specific questions of all students, right? Especially the K through 12 crowd. Stop asking them what they want to do when they grow up, because it's not going to be one thing. And when we phrase that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's always tied to what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And what they're going to do is a lot of different things. So stop asking that question. And phrase it another way. What kinds of things do you want to do? That's a much gentler question. The other one is, what are you going to major in? So from about the time you're like 10, it seems like now, until you're starting college, what are you going to major in? What are you going to major in? As if that's going to decide the thing for the rest of your life. And sometimes I make people uncomfortable when I say that, but what you major in, I think, is less important than what are the skills you're learning as you're majoring in something. And how do those skills fit a need in the world so that you can plug into those needs when those needs arise? What are those durable skills? How are you learning critical thinking? How are you learning problem solving? What kinds of problems are you learning to solve? How are you working with other people? If we could pull back from the idea that at 18 years old, you have to know everything about the way your life is going to unfold, I think 18-year-olds would be a lot more relaxed and a lot more comfortable. It's one of the things I like about the College of Wooster. As I go into my chat with my students tomorrow on my very first registration day, one of the things I'm going to tell them is we don't want you to declare a major right away. What we want you to do is explore. What are the options? Take a class in something you know you're super interested in. But then think about what are some of the other things that you might want to learn about, and just explore and have some fun with that. Because ultimately, we have designed a curriculum that's going to get you through a major. It's going to get you the 32 credits that you need to graduate. You're going to fulfill all of your requirements. And you'll do this amazing piece of work as your senior project. And then you're going to go out into the world. And we want you to be thinking about that. But one of the things I'm loving now is getting them to think about what their possible lives are, right? So what's possible? Could be 4 different things that you're thinking about. And you might do all 4 of them by the time you're 40, right? So how do you design that? How do we get you the skills that you can then use to design the path that you're going to take? That has resonated with me so profoundly that I think we need to just start asking those kinds of questions.
I agree. And I do hope you get more opportunities to give this speech to the world, because I think the kind of certainty that we expect adolescents to have it's mind-boggling to me. And they're, no offense, adolescents, but your frontal cortex is not fully developed yet, as our, blood, guts, and gore psychology professor can attest to. And, frankly, life changes, your circumstances change, things happen, opportunities pop up. We're always redefining ourselves, I think. And so to expect an 18-year-old to go in, for instance, at McGill, you have to pick a major.
Yeah.
And, if you go into history and then decide you want to be an engineer, you are going to have to go to a different school, because that is not going to happen for you.
Yeah.
So I just think that it's really, it's one of the things that just stuns me about our society is the perfection and the certainty that we expect from teenagers.
Right. And I'll just sort of flip back to your question about, when you're looking at colleges, I also think that has changed so dramatically since I was a student. I think I looked at one college and was advised by my guidance counselor to maybe apply to 3, and they were all publics, right? So there wasn't this, I'm getting hundreds of pieces of mail every day from every college in the country, just inundating me with these flashy things that show me these wonderful campuses, and then tour 20 or 30 before I start making a decision. The cognitive psychologist in me says, decision fatigue. How are these people, choice fatigue? My God, how are they going to make this choice? I have seen students be paralyzed because they've seen too much, right? And so how do they make these decisions when they've seen 20 different schools, all of which are beautiful, all of which have really cool stuff going on, and they feel like if they don't make the right choice when they're 17 years old, it will negatively impact the rest of their lives. And that's a lot of pressure for a 17-year-old kid to be under.
Yeah.
So anyway, we can sort of winnow those choices down. I think is a great thing to do it's a good service to the student.
Absolutely. There are so many amazing colleges in this country, and you'd probably be happy at 100 of them, let's say. How do you pick?
Friends, this concludes the second part of Lisa's interview with Dr. Jenni Griffin. We hope you'll join us next week for the final part. On Thursday's episode, I will be joined by Julia for what will be a two-part discussion on an article that's creating a lot of buzz out there. It appeared in the New York Times and it's entitled, Study of Elite College Admissions Data Suggests Being Very Rich is Its Own Qualification. And three writers on the byline here, Atish Bhatia, Claire Kane Miller, and Josh Katz. And it appeared July 24th in the New York Times. A question from an anonymous listener wants to know if it's better to take the courses you want to take in high school, or should you go for the highest weighted GPA, even if this means not taking some courses you like, but they aren't weighted as high when weighted GPAs are calculated. And we have a brand new interview, and I kid you not, I've done some amazing interviews in the last 6 years, but this interview may be my absolute favorite that we've ever had on Your College Bound Kid. And that says a lot because I believe it's number 150. But it's Lisa's interview with Evan Mandery, author of the book Poison Ivy. It is a must listen, so we hope you'll tune in. Linda joins Lisa for a spotlight on SCAD in Savannah, Georgia, also known as Savannah College of Art and Design. And friends, I close you out with the 10th and final quote from my book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions. It's a book I wrote back in 2017. And our regular listeners are not going to be surprised by number 10, the last one. It comes from Frank Sachs, who's a former president of NACAC, the National Association for College Admission Counseling. And it simply says this: college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. Now, friends, I have to repeat that. If I've been repeating my last few that I really like, I got to repeat this. College is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Linda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Matvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joyce Ducker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stylianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Linda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcasts. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.